Welcome back to the 5th episode of the Mind Mastery series, Trading Psychology, and today we will be talking about anger. The thing with anger is it burns everything around you, including your portfolio. And this is why when you learn to control anger, it won't only help to protect your portfolio, but it will help to protect your profits and let them grow. And this is why by the end of this video, you'll be better suited to control your anger and grow your portfolio at the same time. And we've already covered greed, we've already covered patience, we've already covered fear. So if you've not watched those episodes, I highly recommend going back and watching them too. But with that being said, let's move forward. Let's talk about anger and let's talk about ways we can actually control this and ways to think about the emotion of anger. So the first thing we want to talk about is the dangers of anger in trading. Actually, the dangers of anger in the financial markets. What anger does is when it seeps in, it just takes control, right? Have you ever heard the saying, I just see red and nothing else? Well, that's the same in the markets. The second you allow this to take over, everything goes red, everything goes up in fire. Your strategy, your thought process, your calmness, your portfolio. And that is the main thing we are trying to protect, your portfolio, right? I have a saying that I always stick by, and that is, protecting your profits, protecting your portfolio is just as important as making profits. Why? Because if you can look after them, the profits will look after themselves. But if anger seeps in, it burns everything around. It burns all the foundations that you have worked so hard to put into place. It burns all the strategies. It burns the clarity of mind, right? And this is why if we can understand our anger, particularly note it down in a journal so that we're aware that we get angry in certain situations or certain times, then we can reflect upon it and learn to control it or learn to improve upon it, or at least know where is the anger seeping in and how can I take that anger or recognize it and nip it in the bud, right? So I guess the first step is actually understanding what anger can do and really understanding it, right? And when you come to that understanding, knowing that will burn everything around you, from that point we can move forward and try to control it. Because let's be honest, right? And I speak about this in the previous episodes when we're talking about fear, patience. You're never going to be able to just dampen all these emotions, right? That's not going to happen unless you're some kind of robot. So the next best thing is to be aware of these emotions, to be aware of what's happening, and then actually just learn to control it essentially, right? Actually learn to understand when emotions are arising and learn to pinpoint them and curb them. Put measures in place, right? So the first thing is understanding anger, knowing where it's seeping in, and really knowing the gravity of what it can do. And then we can move on to the second part. And the second part I want to talk about is revenge trading. Revenge trading, I would say, is probably the number one symptom of anger, right? Because anger and revenge go hand in hand, right? You hear it all the time. You see it in action movies, you see it in movies where the hero gets taken out or something happens to him, something happens to his family. In this case, something happens to portfolio, the trade. And what's the first thing we want to do? We want to take revenge. It's a natural instinct. And again, coming back to the first point, recognizing when this is happening, the anger, and then recognizing the revenge seeping in, right? So one thing leads to other. So revenge trading is almost like adding fuel to the fire, right? The fire's burning with anger. Revenge trading is you adding fuel to the fire. So whenever you feel yourself wanting to trade again when you're coming out of anger, remember you're adding fuel to the fire. And the more you trade, the more fuel adds to the fire. And what's happening? The fire's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and your portfolio is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So you don't want to add fuel to the fire. In actual fact, the last thing you should be doing when you get angry is trading. Why? Because you're trading emotionally. If you're trading emotionally, you're gambling. And if you're gambling, you might as well go to the casino because there is no place for that in trading. So recognize that revenge trading is like adding fuel to the fire, right? We're giving oxygen to that emotion, and that is not what we want to do. So recognize the anger, feel yourself wanting to place another trade, then you know at that moment you are adding fuel to the fire, and that is not what you should be doing, right? So revenge trading, when you feel another trade coming or thinking to yourself, oh, I got the direction wrong, I could just short this now, or I could just double my exposure because the direction was right because I got stopped out. No, you need to stop right there. You need to put a stop loss on yourself, because what's happening there is you're adding fuel to the fire. So that is going from recognizing anger to then revenge trading, right? So recognizing the emotion and then the symptoms of it, revenge trading, right? So that's part 2. So part 3 is regrouping and accepting losses. And this is fundamentally very important. Some might even argue that accepting losses is the most important part. Let me pause for a second. Let's ask a simple question. Do you really believe that you will win 100% of every trade that you take? Because if the answer is yes, you are not ready for trading, because you have to accept that there will be losses. So when you enter a trade, the first thing that you should be doing is not looking at how much money you can make, but how much money you can lose. So therefore, when you're entering a losing trade, you're already prepared for it. If you're already prepared for it, you're less likely to get angry and therefore less likely to revenge trade. Do you see how all these things are linked? Right? So again, accepting losses is a fundamental mindset that you must accept in order to not allow the emotion of anger to rise, or at least control it, right? So stepping back, recognizing the anger, not revenge trading, regrouping, remembering that losses are a normal part of trading, right? Accepting it and moving forward. Not trading that day, reflecting in a journal, right? Because you should be writing down these losses in your journal, what went wrong. That is a better way to output your anger. That is a better way to channel it. So you recognize the anger, you recognize that adding fuel to it is revenge trading. You remember that losses are normal. So you step back and you use that anger, if it's still there, to output into a journal to reflect on what is going on. Do you see this step-by-step process, right? Recognizing the emotion, recognize the symptom of revenge trading, coming back to the mindset or having it there that losses are a normal part of trading, and then regrouping and reflecting, right? So these are all linked, and this is just step-by-step, right? This is a great way to think about things. Now look, there is no substitute for experience. Absolutely none, right? If you're trading with a demo account, that might help you with strategies. That might help you with looking at certain indicators or looking at certain time series on a chart or any of those things, right? But one thing it won't help with is emotions. Why? Because you need a real account, real money on the line, because that's when emotions creep in. That is ultimately when emotions creep in, when the stakes are higher, okay? So that is the third thing, which is accepting losses, regrouping, and reflecting. So number 4 is stick to your fundamentals, stick to your strategy. And that comes it pretty much ties in with the regroup part, right? So when we've regrouped and we've reflected, that should bring us back to our strategy. Why? Because what is the point of the reflection? The point is to see what went wrong, so then you can adapt and tweak your strategy. And if I could just pinpoint into here our episode 2 of patience, I speak about patience with your strategy, right? Because you need to allow time for your strategy to play out. You need to allow time for stop losses to hit. What did we talk about? Stop losses are normal. So patience with your strategy allows you to hit stop losses and allow it to be a normal part, because when you hit those stops, only can you then tweak. If you're not hitting stop losses, you cannot tweak. So this is where patience with your strategy comes in. So we are bringing in the patience part of the trading psychology from episode 2 and putting it into the 4th part of this anger video, where we're talking about sticking to your fundamentals, sticking to your strategy, allowing your strategy to play through. And it links again to the first 3 things, right? Recognizing anger, the fuel to the fire, accepting losses, sticking to your fundamentals, sticking to your strategy. When I lay it out like this, it seems very simple, right? And I know in practice it is anything but. However, this is where the experience comes in, right? This is where we look to the experience to really embed all of these practical things. So with that being said, sticking to your fundamentals, sticking to your strategy, that is a key part, and that is the follow on from the first 3 parts. Part number 5 is stay cool, like a pro athlete, right? Let's look at some analogies. If you're a boxer and you're in the ring, or even on the build up to the fight, if you allow the opponent to get in your head, you get angry, you get emotional, what happens? What happens to your strategy? It goes out the window. What happens in trading? Your strategy goes out the window, your fundamentals go out the window. And this is why using analogy like a pro athlete is great here, because we can, even if you're not a pro athlete, you can understand that in order to be top of your game, right? There's no place for emotions. However, pro athletes will tell them yourselves, even Mike Tyson, right? Arguably the greatest heavyweight to have ever lived, right? Let's not debate that, but The point I'm making is that he himself even said that before he entered the ring, he would have all these emotions, fear creeping in. Once he got into the ring, he stuck to his fundamentals, he stuck to his strategy, and that enabled him to win time after time. And it's the same thing here. You are going to feel these emotions. I'm not here to pretend that you're not. This is why we are making the mind mastery. This is why we're making the trading psychology videos, to help you understand that the control of these emotions is understanding them and having practical advice. Episode 4, trading psychology. We speak about practical advice. We're tying it all together. So think about it like a pro athlete, right? They will get emotional, but there is not room for emotions, right? We have to be able to curb our emotions. We have to be able to understand them, use practical ways to hone them in to our advantage, right? To our benefit. And that is the best analogy I can think of. So let's wrap this up. So part 1 is recognizing the emotion of anger, right? It's recognizing when it is setting in, understanding what's there, and then the symptoms of it. Revenge trading, adding fuel to the fire. So think about anger as a fire building up, and when you recognize this fire, your innate reaction, right? Your fight reaction, you have fight and flight, is going to be to revenge trade. Right? Just the same way in life that something happens that you don't like, you want to take revenge. So recognize that when you want to trade after getting angry, you're adding fuel to the fire. Then that brings you back to thinking about losses are normal. Stepping back, regrouping, reflecting in your journal. And that reflection, remembering that losses are normal, brings you back to part 4, sticking to your strategy, sticking to your fundamentals, having patience with your strategy, patience with market conditions, patience before entry, right? And going back to the strategy and tweaking, adapting. And you can only do that if you reflect, because you shouldn't be flip-flopping your strategy every week. You need to give it time to play out in order to tweak, practice. And then the last point is use the analogy of a pro athlete. Think about, is there space for emotion? Emotions will creep up, but it's about honing them emotions and sticking to those fundamentals. So with that being said, that is the 5th episode, anger. So we've covered, like I said in the beginning, we have covered greed, we've covered patience, we've covered fear. Episode 4 was practical advice, and this one is anger. And I guarantee you, now you will look at anger and emotion in a different way when it comes to trading the financial markets. You'll recognize it better. Actual fact, watch this video again, really take notes, because like I said, there is no substitute for experience. However, experience can come quicker when you can look for the telltale signs. It's like the penny drop moment. When somebody's older and they give you a bit of advice and you're just a teenager or you're a young person, you dismiss it. But once you hit that experience, you can recognize it quicker because that memory creeps back in. You have that penny drop moment, that time that person told you that thing, and then when you live that experience, you go, I recognize it now. So use this video as that. Use this video as a way to remember when you start getting angry, the steps that we have talked about. So with that being said, I'll be back next week with another episode in the Mind Mastery series. I'm out. It's your boy GTS.